Good morning. Welcome to AP Computer Science A, and A is for amazing. Today we are going to be covering section 4.4, algorithms for strings. Be sure to have your notes with you. We have also a repo ready to go, your name, your period, and don't forget to click on submit so you can get all of your points. And we can code together. Now, let's go through some of the review. On the last section, we covered for loops, and we did some algorithms with numbers. Now we are going to be doing a few more algorithms with strings, and we kind of started doing that on the last section, correct? So let's go and go through and get user input, and we are going to get a word from the user, and then we're going to print each letter in a separate line. Do you remember how to do this? Go and pause it, try it, see what you get, and then we can compare our answers. Pause it. You got it? Excellent. So in this case, first I need to make sure that I have my scanner class imported. So we have import java.utilities scanner. And now let's go ahead and initialize and declare our class variable scanner. Scanner. Remember that you can actually name it anything you want, but we are going to be using scan for now. But if you want to use SC, which some of you guys have been using, it's fine. Scanner, and we're going to get input from the keyboard, so therefore it's going to be system.in. And let's go and ask the user for a word, system.out.println. Please enter a word. And now let's go ahead and catch it and store it somewhere. So it'll be string word is equal to scan will be the object that we are using to use the scanner class. And the method that we're going to be using will be next line. And now what we want to do, we want to be able to create a for loop so we can go through each of the characters in a string and print it out in a separate line. So let's go and create a for loop. So it'll be for int I equal to 0. Then I is going to be while I is less than the length, so word.length. And now the third component will be I++. So let's go and take a little time to be able to debrief and see what's happening here. First, we have, and let me go and tab this too. We have our input from the user, which will be word. And let's assume that they type in Santa Fe. And let's go and place our index right underneath so we can start thinking about a few things that are happening. So one of the things that you want to be able to think about is, where do I want to start? You don't always want to start at 0. Many times you do, but not always. Now in this case, we want to be able to print the first letter, which the index is 0. So therefore, we do want it to be 0. So we want to be able to declare and initialize, that's the first component. The second component is our Boolean statement, while I is less than the length of the word, correct? The question is, do we want to make it equals or not? That is something that you need to be able to decide. In every case is different. So in this case, the length of the word, what is the length of this word? So the length is equal to 8. So do we want to print the index in index 8? No, there's no such a thing. So that's why we want to be able to just leave it at 7. Once it's 8, we don't want to go through the loop. We don't want to go through the iteration. We don't want to go through the loop any longer. And now, what do we want to print? System.out.println And what do we want to print? We want to be able to print one of the characters at a time. So we're going to use the substring. Substring. Now, we are going to go one character at a time. So we're going to start with I, comma, I plus 1. And that's going to print, once it's 0, it's going to go from 0 to 0 plus 1 is 1. So from 0 to 1. From 0 to 1, and remember that's not going to print the last one, so therefore it's not going to print the 1, it's going to print the S. Then it's going to go through another iteration, and now once it goes through and it prints the S, then it goes through, it increases by 1, so now it's going to be 1. And it's going to say, is 1 less than the length of the word? No, because the length is 8. So therefore it goes through again, and that's going to be from 1 to 1 plus 1 is 2, from 1 to 2, so it's not going to print the 2, so therefore it prints the 8, and it goes through every single time. Now, something to keep in mind is what happens at the very end, just like we talked about first. So once it gets to 7, increases from 6 to 7, it's 7 less than the length of the word, which is 8, yes, it goes through, then it'll be I will be 7, plus 1 will be 8, from 7 to 8. Even though there's not an 8th index, it's fine. It will not give you an out of bounds error. So that is something to keep in mind. Then we'll go through an example in a few minutes. So now let's go and see if it runs. Error. Unexpected on, oh, I forgot to place my semicolon. You probably saw that. Let me get myself out of the way. Now let's go and run it. Please enter word, banana. And therefore, it works perfect. So that's what we covered last time. Now, what if I want to be able to save it in a new word, in a new string, by one character at a time? And let's see what happens. So if we need to be able to have the need to be able to save into a new string, we're going to say a string, and we're going to say new word is equal to, and we're going to initialize it as a empty string. And now instead of saving it, instead of putting each of the words, we are going to save it into a new string. And one of the things that you have to remember is the strings are immutable. So therefore, I cannot change the original word. I can replace it with a new one, but I cannot change the contents of it, right? I can go and place it into a new location and create a new string. But we are going to concatenate each of the letters one by one, by one, by one, by one. And we're going to store it into the new word. So we're going to say new word plus or equal the old one plus the string, plus that each of the specific letters. Now, most of the time we can actually rewrite this as plus. And now we are going to print system.out.println, and we're going to print the new word. So what do you think is going to happen? First, we'll go through and place the B, and then the A, then the N, then the A, and so on. So let's go and type in error again. So I left an extra parenthesis in here. There. So now, banana. And it did it. Now the new word is banana. Isn't that impressive? Well, let's say that we actually want to place a space in between each one of the letters. So therefore, we can say new plus an empty, and now we can actually see the difference. Banana. Or if you want to be able to place an underscore in between each of the letters. Now we are going to get a, are we going to get an underscore on the very first one? No, right? But we will get an underscore on the very end, which is fine for now. We can deal with those little issues later on as we get more comfortable with strings. So that is one of the uses that we can actually go through each of the characters within a string and be able to manipulate it and concatenate it into a new string. Now, what if I want to be able to print each of the letters, or either print or let's go and store it. Let's go and store it, and I want it to be in the reverse order. So I want the A first, then the N, then the A, then the N, then the A, then the B. What can we do? See if you can modify it. So we actually are going to save it backwards, and we don't want any spaces or any underscores in between each of the letters. So what can we do? Go and pause it, see if you can place it in reverse order, and then we can talk about it. Got it? Excellent. So in this case, we know that we need to be able to start with word.length. Correct? We're going to change the order. Now the question is, which one do we want to start with? If the length is 8, do we want to start with the 8th index? No, because it's not in there. So therefore, I'm going to place it -1. So therefore, word length, which is 8, -1 is going to be 7. So we're going to start with the last letter. When do we want to stop it? Do we want to stop it when I is greater than 0? Or do we want it I is greater than or equal to 0? So that's another decision that you need to make. So let's think about it. So once it gets, remember that this is while. It's going to continue while this is true. It's going to go through another iteration every single time. So let's assume that it gets to 0, correct? So it increases. Oh, it should decrease as well, right? So that is something that we need to make sure that we change. We need to change all 3 components. We need to change this to start from the very end, -1. We need to change it from less than to greater than, and then we need to change this so it starts to go decrease by 1. So let's say that it's going to 1, right? Goes to 1, it prints the A, or it concatenates into the new character. Then it goes through and says I minus minus, so now it used to be 1, so now it's going to be 0. While I is greater than 0, well, 0 is not greater than 0, so it's not going to go through, and it's not going to take care of the last letter, which is S. So therefore, we do need to place it an equal sign in here. Do you agree? Good answer. So therefore, let's try it. Banana. And now it's backwards. So there are a lot of uses to be able to do for loops when we are working with algorithms, and this is going to allow us to be able to do more complex operations once we get to arrays in array list. So I know that we might be thinking like, why are we spending so much time with strings? Because strings have an index. It allows us to be able to do challenging problems that will get you thinking of transversing the index of a string and be able to manipulate the contents, or not really can manipulate the contents, but just be able to access them, whether it's one at a time or several of them at the same time. Now, another thing that we can do is we can find, so let's get rid of this, or let's go and just, for now, comment it out on both, since we're not going to use it for now. Let's say that we want to be able to count how many ends are in the words that are being inputted. So therefore, we're going to use a counter. So just say in counters we can count, and we're going to test that with 0. Whenever we need to be able to find something within the word, what do we need to do? Which method can we use? Now remember that you can use your APCSA and will allow you to use the following chart. So if you look in here, which method can you use? Another thing that you can do for now is to just search for string Java class. We want to go into the Oracle, and these are all the methods that we are able to use. Starting constructors, and these are all the methods that we are able to use. So you can use any of them for your AP exam, but the ones that you want to focus on are the ones that are here, because you will not be able to have access to this. So which one do we need to use in order to be able to find the location of a character or a string? Correct. We can use index of. So therefore, if you want to be able to find whether the word has any ends, we're going to need an if statement. If we want to be able to, it's going to go through each of the strings one at a time. So if word the substring is going to go from I to I plus 1 equals, remember that we can't say, we cannot use a comparison because it's going to compare the memory location. So therefore with strings, we need to make sure that we do that equals. And we want to be able to see if they have any ends. If the specific letter that we are going through, remember, we're going to go through each and every single one of those characters using the substring I plus 1. If it's equal to n, then we're just going to increase counter plus plus. And now we can actually just print the counter and see if that works. So therefore, if I type in banana, it should be printing 2. If I type in Connecticut, only 2. Any words I have 3? While typing banana, I'm going to press banana. So it should be 4. So that works. Now there's going to be times that you actually want to be able to take letters out or take substrings out. So let's say that I want to be able to take the ends out. So we know how to find them, correct? We know that if it's equal to n, we found the location and we can count them. Now, if we want to be able to get rid of them, what we're going to do, we are going to create a new word, but without them. So remember that this line, for this line, this one was creating one character at a time. So therefore, it was reading the S, and it was going to place it in there. Then the A, then the N, then the T, then the A, then the space. Once you go through another iteration, will be the F, then the E. What if I want to be able to get rid of the N? What should I do? Well, what we're going to do is that, if he finds it, then don't add it to it. Just skip it. Do nothing. If it is 9n, then let's go and add it to the new word that we are creating. So therefore, it's going to say, is the first one an S, an N? No. So therefore, add it. Then it goes through another iteration. It says, is the next one an N? That's false. So therefore, it's not going to do anything. So it's going to add it. Then the next one is an N. Yes. Do nothing, and it's going to skip this line. So it'll be T-A-F-E. Let's try. Santa Fe. Well, but we need to be able to print the new word instead of the counter. Now let's go and run it. Santa Fe. And we don't want to print it, we want to be able to print it in regular order. So let's go and change this back to normal. See if you can change it back to normal so it goes in sequence. Go and pause it. You got it? All right, so this was just from 0. Remember that we need to change all 3 instances. So this will be just while I is less than, do we want to be worth the length? We want it to be equal to? No. Then we're going to do I plus plus. We have a parenthesis because this is a method and not a variable. Santa Fe. Notice that the N are gone. Banana. So therefore, we are able to remove things, but we're not really removing them from the original string because strings cannot be modified. They're immutable. We have to create a new one and just place one thing at a time. And you can't build each of the letters. Now, we can actually fix this, right? So how can I make it a little simpler to read? Correct. So basically, you say, well, if this is false, we wanted to do this. So therefore, we can just negate it. And we can just place it as part of the, we can negate this. And instead, we just place this inside that if, and there's no reason to have the else, right? If the actual character that we're looking at is not equal to n, then go ahead and add it. If it's equal to n, this will be a false statement, so therefore it's going to skip it. It'll do exactly the same thing that we had it do. So things that you need to be comfortable with. Things that you need to be comfortable with is if you are able to print one letter at a time in original order and also in reverse. Things that you need to be aware of. Index of is able to find where the index or specific character or a substring. So therefore, if I'm looking to see which of the following words have the word key, I can actually find them. Things to be aware of is that in order to be able to get rid of specific letters, we actually need to be able to create a new string, but we're going to be able to either create it using one letter at a time or a few letters at a time, depending on the algorithm that you're trying to solve. So this is the lesson for today. Email me if you have any questions. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.